Zelsy, if I look like James Slipper in the Wallaby pack, it's because the Cape Storm finally got me. Sinuses, head cold, all that crazy stuff. I feel like that Wallaby pack who went through 80 years against the Boks.
You sound a bit like Johnny from WKRP in Cincinnati.
Well, I feel a bit more like Barry White. But I honestly feel like that Wallaby pack would have felt after that first scrum. Hopefully it gets better. We're going to have a great weekend watching the Wallabies play the Boks out at Honeston. We'll chat about that at the Honeston Hotel. We'll chat about that a little bit later. I went on social media, as I like to do, about an hour after the game, check on my mates down under, see how the All Black supporters were feeling, see how the Wallabies supporters were feeling. And on my blog, I said, hand over the Rugby Championship trophy to the Boks now! 33-0 up after 75 minutes. And you just brought in the team, and I'm looking to maybe adjust that headline. 10 changes to those Giants who went to Suncorp Stadium and humiliated the Wallabies. Is Rassie just taking the piss or what?
Man, I think he is. I messaged you during the game when we started seeing Cheslin scrum off and we started seeing the funny line-outs and stuff. And I said, I think Rassie's just bored out of his mind. He's just trying to have some fun, play all the trick plays he can find. Now he's made 10 changes for this game, despite the fact that we've got a great lead in the Rugby Championship on the basis that the All Blacks lost to the Pumas. So, interesting calls.
Okay, if we look at the Brisbane statement performance, and I called it a statement performance.
Yes.
We said in the week it's got to be 20-plus points. You said, look, there's no way that Australian team should even come close to this Bok team. But we said that before. We've seen poor Australian teams win in Australia against very good Springbok teams. Incredible statement performance. 35 minutes for the Wallabies to get into our 22.
Yeah.
And they spent 20 seconds there. And at that time, we had spent 4.5 minutes in their 22.
Yeah.
At 33-0, if we had stayed 15-15, it could have ended 50-0. The last 10 minutes, maybe a bit of adversity. We played with 13-15, then 14-15. We had 3 guys carded. Not great discipline. But those 6 penalty scrums, Sasha's performance at fly, Peter Steff at lock just been magnificent.
Yep.
Curtly Aronson out on the win, and Jesse Krill, who just gets better and better. And then Ben Jason Dixon, 19 tackles from 19 attempts.
Machine.
It was the statement performance to show the world when the Boks put their A-team out there, this is what you're going to get. And with the greatest respect to Rassie, to anyone, there was a Bok team that played Portugal. It wasn't the A-team. And it's an A-team that played the Wallabies in Brisbane. This isn't an A-team that's playing in Perth.
No, and I'm not even sure it's a B team. Like, there's so many changes there. And, you've spoken about, it's about building depth and that sort of thing. And, I mean, it's Rassie Erasmus, so you can't really argue with the guy. But at the same time, in my experience, when they try bloody youngster, they're bloody youngster with experience around him. They've done that with Sasha. When you make 10 changes like this, it reminds me when we played Wales and we ended up losing. We made a bunch of changes that almost changed the whole team. We lost 13-12. So when you make 10 changes, you're not really giving guys an honest shot to prove themselves in the Bok jersey like would usually be the case. You're kind of throwing these guys in the deep end and seeing whether they can swim in a way, because there's a lot of new combinations. Guys haven't played test rugby together before. Some of these guys are making their first test starts. So if in this game you'd started Morne van den Berg and you'd started Fussy in last week's team, I'd say, okay, that's growing depth. He's giving these 2 guys an opportunity to roll with the regulars and see how they perform. When you make 10 changes, what are you going to measure success based on? Because it's a completely new team that has zero cohesion.
It's a very interesting selection for a very interesting week, because they would have backed themselves to go to Brisbane and get the win. I don't know if they would have thought bonus point, but to get the win. The All Blacks would have backed themselves to bank 5 league points.
Yeah.
At home against Argentina. The average score in their last 3 games against Argentina, 39-point differential. For us to get the All Blacks to come away with 0 league points from a first-up home game and under serious pressure to turn it around at Eden Park this weekend, I thought the thinking may have changed to say a bonus 5 we've actually got there. Let's consolidate that, get on the plane with 10 league points. It also gives you the comfort of we could potentially drop 1 at home or potentially drop 1 against Argentina and still win this Rugby Championship based on what we did in Australia. They've really brought Australia right back into this test match with that kind of selection. And again, we keep on saying it when there are changes. I'm not knocking any individual. To be in that Bok squad, you can play some rugby.
Totally.
Okay? But when we look at combinations, Fussy and the 2 winners are not a settled combination in terms of a back through where you got Cheslin, Villy, and Curtly Aronson I mean, it's a trio that's played together so long.
Yeah.
You got Lukanya, we know how good he is. He started his career at 12, but he's back there with Jesse, and we give Damien Delandy a bit of a break, but a very different type of player. Your point, you could understand if it's an experienced 9, or if Pollard starts with Morne van der Berg and Sasha comes off the bench, or he starts at 15. But the actual selection is a big contradiction on everything the Bok coaches have said up until now, that they won't throw any kid to the wolves. But Ulrich Low, 8, Morne van der Berg, 9, and Sasha, 10. So your 8, 9, and 10 spine are kids. One's playing his first test, the other one's just come back.
A week after we said we've got to take every game as it is, not look ahead, I'm the first dog to be saying we've got to be thinking about the World Cup. And there is a way, and I kind of alluded to that already, there is a way to build depth. But when you overhaul a team like this, I mean, if Australia can't get up for this game, if we can beat Australia with this side, then maybe it's time for Australia to just pack it in with the rugby thing, because it's just getting a bit silly now.
But to make 10 changes, to go to a place like Perth where we've done well, but we've also battled. I mean, we haven't gone there and ever destroyed a Wallabies team. We've won by 3 points. We won by a point. They've had poxed wins against us. It's been the odd draw there.
I looked at it the other day. I think we've won 3, drawn 2, and lost 4 in Perth.
Yeah, so, and as much as people say it is a South African home ground, it's not a South African home ground.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of gold out there. There are a lot of South Africans that are staying there, and you also don't get that many who travel. It's like a 7-hour flight from Sydney to Perth. So, personally, I would have just wanted a few tweaks, bank the win, bank the 5 points, and get out of there, and have the comfort of watching Drickers do the style bender a bit later. And it's been a wonderful weekend for South African sport. But everyone says how quickly things can change in a week in sport. Teams can turn things around in a week. I'm reminded of the All Blacks doing us 57-0 in Albany, then going to Argentina, resting 8 of their players, leaving them in Cape Town to prepare for the Boks, who they said would come with an onslaught. They were so disjointed by the time they came back from Buenos Aires, and they won 25-24 against the same Bok team and were hanging on in the end. Damien Delanda got red carded, very, very dodgy decision. Damien McKenzie scored a great try near the end, and they nearly came unstuck because I think they got ahead of themselves. And that's the one key area here. And, Rassie will say he knows what he's doing. He has faith in every player, and every guy must be the next one up who can do it. But when I look at that tight 5 that's starting, and I look at the tight 5 that absolutely demolished the Wallabies and that back row, and then also no Sia, and I don't care what people say, when Sia's not leading them out with that chant, the charisma of the team's not the same, the vibe's certainly not the same, and they're just not the same team. I really think that the person who's going to be the most pleased is Joe Smith and the Australians when he sees this lineup that's come out.
Yeah.
He will certainly back them to win or to possibly come within a score. And what they would need is respectability in either way. Their fear was getting blown away in Perth as well by another 30 points. And then what? Having to face an Argentinian side in Buenos Aires and then the All Blacks on the way back. It could have been a disaster. It's like we've given Australian rugby a lifeline.
No, 100%. And one thing we both know for sure, we know 2 things for sure. Number one, the things we've just said now will not be news to Rassie. He's thought about all of that already. And number 2, he'll be doing this for a reason. The point I'm trying to make is, A, it's clear we're not going all out to try and win this game this weekend because we haven't picked our best team. And B, I would debate somebody who says that this is a depth building exercise, because when you throw 10 guys in on a week's notice where you don't historically win more than you lose, I'm not sure that's really building depth. You may be testing guys. There may be guys that you want to see in the fire how they respond, but it's I wouldn't say you're building depth that way, because it's impossible to answer how good a hooker Grobies is when he's lining up next to Jan-Hendrik Wessels, who's been a hooker and a loose head on and off and is playing some of his first test rugby. It all doesn't line up.
And with Thomas the Tank du Toit, who again shot the lights up for the Sharks, has been outstanding for Bath, but seems to be the Nyelly man of Springbok rugby.
Correct.
Started on the loose head, converted to tight head. Seems to be, like I said this last week, that second team player that does well and then goes up to the first team and kind of gets exposed. So that's not a front row that would rank currently anywhere near the top front rowers in the world. And then you look at the second row pairing, Saman Murat, who's captaining the side, and Ruan Nokia, who hasn't played for a bit, who's coming into the box setup. It's a very, very inexperienced tight 5. And while you've got a very good back row in terms of Peter Steff being there, Marco van Staden, Aurigelo is in form. It's a pack that those Wallabies will think we can actually compete with them as opposed to backpedal for 80 minutes.
100%. I agree with that. And I think definitely it's double barrel, right? It's a 2-point swing there, because if you are the Wallabies, A, you're getting a lighter Bok team to take on in terms of their ferocity, and B, you're getting challenged to your character and your respect levels for Australian rugby. I mean, are you really going to let this B/C team walk into Perth and push you around? What are you going to do about it? So, where I think a lot of those Wallabies may have been in survival mode and have the sniffs this week and maybe not ready to play, I think there'll be a couple of guys there who stand up now and say, hey, this is a challenge. These oaks are disrespecting us. We've got to produce something here. So I think we're going to get the best out of the Wallabies this way. I think it's certainly going to challenge South Africa's favourites tag. And I think in time we may look back at this test, and this will be used as the reason why one or two guys don't play 50 tests for South Africa. That would be my guess.
But if you're looking and you look at spines of teams and structures, you've got the most inexperienced tight five is probably picked, the most inexperienced halfback pairing, and a fullback who's played a handful of games over 3 years for the Boks. Yes, a lot of insurance on the bench. Okay.
Yeah, the hospital squad.
So that's not a bomb squad, a hospital squad. So that's the only thing that gives me comfort about who comes on and when do they come on. But I don't expect to see this team that starts being 33-0 up on the hour.
No.
At all.
No. And I hope they are, but I don't see it.
I really expect it to be a bit of a slugfest. A game where there's competitiveness. And we've seen that even in Super Rugby, where some of the better New Zealand teams kind of took their foot off the pedal a bit, went to Canberra and came unstuck. Went to Perth and came unstuck against the Western Force. Because just on that day, they were 10% off their game. They had played a couple of second stringers.
Yeah.
And these guys, boosted by home ground advantage, actually came on and played for their survival. Australian rugby, post what happened in Brisbane, they are playing for so much this week. We made our statement. We are one in the world, back-to-back world champions. What the Bok coaching staff consistently says is we want to win in between World Cups. We want to win rugby championships, win end-of-year tours, win a Grand Slam tour. We want to win when we expected to win. Is this also potentially, playing devil's advocate here, Rassie saying we've got 1 out of 2, which is what we went to get, whether it was going to be in Brisbane or in Perth. We back ourselves to win the 2 at home against New Zealand, given what's happened to them. If we lose, that's all happy days. If we win, my God, how good are we? My goodness, how good are we?
Totally.
Would he see himself as an all-win situation, or?
Well, I think he's definitely positioned himself like that, because one thing Rassie's very much about the guys is letting the main thing be the main thing. And nobody's bigger than the country's bigger than everybody. And I think one way of keeping guys grounded is to create this jeopardy. I think, in a situation where you have this record equaling win in Brisbane, and then you go absolutely destroy them in Perth, and then you have a week off to go chill on the beach, catch some rays, and then you play the All Blacks back-to-back, sold-out stadium, World Cup final rematch. You don't want to coast into that with an aggregate score of 100-10. You want to go into that with a bit of uncomfortable, a bit of a butterfly in the tummy thing. So I think this is definitely going to create that situation.
If you look at that opening game against Wales at Twickers, what he did very differently there to what he had done when they played Wales in Bloemfontein, he threw no one to the Wolves. There seemed to be a lot of science around, I'm picking this player, but I'm giving them such insurance policy on the inside and the outside. I'm picking a certain combination that will help out that individual. And I've got my insurance policy, obviously, in the depth that they have in terms of a match 23. And I'm going to try some new things. And they always believe that the strength of the opposition would allow that. The same against Portugal. Portugal, with the greatest respect, if all 4 URC teams played them, I would be looking at home, we were looking at a 60-20 kind of result. So it was a great exercise for those guys playing with the mentality of green jersey, playing test match rugby. What is there that Rassie and the Boks can lose from this game, should they lose?
The rugby championship. So I think the Boks are in a great position to win the tournament from a player personnel and a momentum thing. I think Rassie has baked that all into his selections here. I don't think that's an issue, because the guys that aren't playing didn't lose this weekend if the team loses, and those are the stalwarts and the guys that will walk in against the All Blacks. But I think it's rare that you get into a rugby championship where in the opening weekend, the All Blacks lose at home to Argentina. And so I think there's value in banking a rugby championship title, and obviously Rassie does too, and he thinks that regardless of what happens this week, they're going to beat the All Blacks in South Africa, and they are going to win the rugby championship. I don't think that's necessarily worth the risk. And so I wonder whether the jeopardy is worth it for that. So for me, that's the sort of any doubt or the revival of Australia that comes from that, I don't think is necessarily worth rolling the dice this week. I absolutely would like to see some changes this week. I thought that would be a great idea, but to genuinely test some depth, play one or two guys that you wouldn't necessarily have played. BJ's out. You may have had to make a call at 7 there anyway. And Ruan Nokia's had this knee injury that he missed the last one with, so you could have made a decision there at 5 as well. I don't know about making 10 changes. I think that is quite high risk for limited reward.
In a game that's now played by 23, not by 15.
Yeah.
Are we getting carried away by looking at the starting 15 and not saying, hang on a second, if they do struggle, the first 40 is not going well, it's a 15-10 game either way, boom, on come this monster pack, and all of a sudden, they've tired out, because Australia's got 8 to start with, they haven't got much that comes off the bench, and it's hello Eben, it's hello Malcolm Marx, it's hello Ox, it's hello to some big names.
Totally.
And then if you look at the back line, you've got the comfort of a Andre Pollard there, the explosiveness of a Jesse Creel, and then picking a Mani Lebok and a Andre Pollard tells you that they see Pollard getting a run for 20 minutes at 12 again. So they are playing around with a lot of things. What would be more damaging to the Wallabies had they had to play against that team that had them 33-0 down after an hour in Brisbane and they took another big one, or playing against this team and losing? Which one is more damaging?
Well, mate, I've got to say, if a team can travel to Australia and then throw in guys who are relatively ice cold and beat you in Perth, where they don't have a great record, I mean, that'd be a bit of a gut punch. I mean, I don't really know what exactly, if you Joe Schmidt and the C team beats you at home, what do you do? I mean, you're literally going to have to get on the phone with Joe Roth and say, listen, mate, can we get you fit in 6 months' time? Because what are you going to do?
Owen Finnegan, we need you. we need that old Brumbies team from
Exactly.
2000, okay? Looking at the Bok lineup, now that he's chosen it, okay?
Yes.
Jan-Hendrik Wessels is the big project.
Yeah.
Rassie's always believed he's a loose head from his school days. Jake believed he was a hooker. And Jake's belief, chatting to him, was, look who's playing prop for South Africa. They're not going anywhere. They're big, strong fellas. But the hooker resources outside of obviously Bongi and Marks hasn't always been great. There's a gap for you there. But he never really came through at hooker for the Bulls. Robbie's overtook him, and now he's getting a start. And he's a very good player individually. But that front row, the cohesion, I'm expecting to be disjointed, given that they've never played together as such. You got a guy then who is coming back from an injury. He wants to prove himself in Ruan Nokia. It's like a tight five Barbars
Totally.
mix. I mean, they're good individual players, so don't get us wrong when we kind of picking apart the selection. We're not for 1 minute saying Jan Hendrik can't play or Ruan Nokia's not good.
Totally.
Victor Matfield rates him and says he would be his go-to. And I mean, Victor Matfield, you talk locks. If Victor Matfield talks, you listen.
He's the guy.
But in the context of what we saw last week, when you saw that starting tight five of the box and you saw the grunt that an Eben and a Peter Steff brought together, and then what they could back it up with in the back three, and then you conversely look at the All Blacks, and it's not so much their front row because there wasn't a scrum for 61 minutes.
Yeah.
It's their back five of their pack that is so vulnerable, so light. You look at their two locks. I mean, they would struggle to make a URC team here. You look at what came off the bench for them, Josh Lord. Wow, that's an All Black test lock. You look at their back row, Artie Severe, their best player, he wouldn't make an All Black team that had McCall, Jerome Kiner, and Kieran Reid. And he seems to be operating on adrenaline and kind of reputation. Blackadder looks like a useful Super Rugby player, grit. And Dalton Papa Healy, I think he should be playing for Italy, but yeah, he looks like he's got great stature. He carries the watermelons under his arms, but that's kind of like it. So we kind of mock them a bit. We have a bit of a giggle at them. But when I look at this pack that we've chosen, it has a lot of similarities in terms of quality as a collective unit to that one that really got shown up by the Pumas and got totally outplayed.
Yeah, and the thing is that, like, with the box, so the one, it's a great win. It was a record equaling win. If you're going to do some sort of critical analysis of that Springbok performance, the thing that you would say is with all that dominance, you would have thought they'd put more points on the board and the score would have been bigger. The margin would have been bigger. That would have been the takeaway, like the work on for this week. Like Oaks, we made so many opportunities here. We had total control of the collisions, breakdown we owned, scrum penalties, field position. It was all going our way. We need to be more clinical in the way that we finish, right? And that's in the framework of them stretching their legs with a more expansive game plan. So when you go from that to the next week and you make 10 changes to the team under a new regime on attack, with your last performance with your most cohesive team not being efficient, there's a lot of moving parts there that, creates a bit of a grey area. Like, how exactly is this team supposed to function with alacrity, given that it's 10 changes and it's a new regime?
But if you again look at the genius that is Rassie, some call him the mad genius, the innovator, is he not taking all the pressure off these players by picking them in this way and saying, there's a good chance you may come unstuck, but it's going to be a valuable lesson for you. What you kept on saying in your conspiracy timelines, he certainly put a few oaks out to pasture when we lost to Wales in Bloemfontein in the kind of selections that he made to show you're actually not that good. And if you then come through, you've proved me wrong, it's a bonus. If he had gone in with that same team and some heroic back to the wall, Wallaby win, these guys have been away for 2 weeks, their minds may be on the All Blacks now, and Aussie pocks a win against the core of that side that won in Brisbane, it's like, okay, law and order restored in Australian and Southern Hemisphere rugby down under, they're not quite as good as we say.
That's a great point.
Now it's like, well, wait till you play the A team. Did you see what they did to the Wallabies? Look what their B/C team's doing to the Wallabies. Could he not be taking that tact and saying, I can still pox this win, and even if I don't, there's 4 games that we believe as South Africans we can win. 2 at home against the All Blacks, 1 at home against the Pumas, and that we've always done traditionally well when traveling to Argentina.
100%. I think you are, if I had to guess, I'd say that's 100% of the money. My concern is that players in that environment know that a bad performance is a bad performance, and sometimes it's like a bad stink that never leaves you. And so, like, you look at the history, Dave van Hooselen, Gaffie de Tooy had a nightmare, disappeared.
Louis Kuhn. So, you don't want to be one of those players. And what it does is it creates an anxiety and a jeopardy about this match for those guys. And maybe Rassie wants to see how those players respond. I'm just saying, potentially there could be a really great player in there who gets his fingers burnt because he's thrown into a brand new team, playing a new way, away from home. And I don't know whether that's necessarily worth it. A question I'm going to throw at you. Willie Leroux.
Yeah.
95 Test veteran, was 96 now?
Yeah, 96, yeah.
He's going to play 100 Tests this year.
Yeah.
And that maybe there's a phasing out of him next year. And he's in the squad to mentor youngsters and that. Would it not have made more sense to stick Fassie on the right wing, Willie Leroux at fullback, and give Fassie that confidence of a back three? Because again, Fassie comes in, like he did against Wales. Individually, he had a very good game.
Yep.
Was good under the high ball, did good things, but didn't control it as a back three. Now he's back in there and he's got to rely on his individual brilliance. Or is it Rassie saying to him, I need you to show me you can
step up
and give me the game management, and I'm giving you the experience of Cheslin and form, but I'm also giving you the experience of a World Cup winner in Makazole. But you need to show me you can control that back three, a bit like he did with Damien. What would you say to that?
I think Rassie's pretty ruthless. I think he says, listen, you say you're a Springbok fullback, this is your chance. And I think that's across the board. Jan-Hendrik Wessels, you think you can cut it as a test match front row forward? Let's go. You're up. This is your chance. Take it. And I think that's the environment these guys live in. These Oaks are not Hallmark Channel products. Like, these Oaks, they live on the edge. They play a game that's very physical when the stakes are high. So I think that's the kind of language that they talk there. And I think these guys do have an opportunity. I'm just worried about the history behind some of the nightmares that guys have in such situations. So, like I said, no doubt Rassie has a plan. I think you're on point there. It would make more sense to have a Willie if you were trying to control things at the back with the experience of a 96 Test veteran than throwing a guy in from the cold. But this is Fassie's chance to shine like he had before. And we all are holding thumbs that he takes it and makes the most of it and creates more depth and more options for the box at fullback.
Because he is a fullback wing option moving forward. We know that Damien will replace Willie in terms of he's the starting 15. He was the World Cup final starting 15.
Yeah.
Sasha is obviously the anointed one with Pollard now. Marnie having dropped down to 3, still in the mix though. Pollard potentially playing a role at 12. Jesse out and out 13. But what they've done interesting there is to try and get Lukhanyo back into the mix. And he started his career at 12. They're playing him at 12, but they are recognizing the importance of Jesse Kriel at 13 in terms of that defensive
Running
pattern.
the D, yeah. And Jesse's in great form as well. Interesting call to play them together because when you play the All Blacks, one of those two guys is starting at outside centre. So there is an element of risk to that, especially with Lukhanyo coming back from a long time out.
Is this just not to give Lukhanyo game time?
Absolutely. And I think he'll thrive at 12. I think he'll be a great 12. And I think maybe that, in a way, extends the life of his career. It's certainly, from a South African perspective, we've spoken in the past about De Allende shifting out to outside centre if needed in an emergency. I love the fact that we're going to test Lukhanyo at inside centre, and I would much rather see a guy like Lukhanyo at inside centre than Handré Pollard or Sasha.
A massive, massive statement to say, you've come of age, my boy, in the last 2 months, Sasha. At 10. He's entrusted him every time, and it points to him, if it goes well in Perth, it points to him starting against the All Blacks. And Pollard, at the moment, very happy to play a mentoring role. And say, like, he's played a decade of rugby championship competition. Let's see what this kid has got. Let me slot into that 12 jersey when I need to.
Yeah.
And let me just kind of manage my body and manage my game time. So you've got to take a bow, Rassie Russ, with Tony Brown, Sticks, the rest of the coaching staff, that you are backing this guy. Because the talk was that Marnie may start this weekend. Sasha may go to fullback and may be on the bench. That, to me, was the most positive selection. Is he said to Sasha, you have a run again. You do the goal kicking again. And he may even go to fullback. Marnie on at 10, Pollard at 12. You know, it's like a trial game.
Absolutely. And it's definitely got that feel to it. And I think a lot of guys are going to try and play out of their skins. And I'm not sure whether that contributes to the cohesion, but certainly there's not going to be a lack of motivation or excitement around this game for everyone involved.
Talk me about the quality of the bench again. And is it a give-me insurance policies or what do you feel he's going to have to play early on in this test match?
He might break a record for most substitutions in the first 30 minutes. I don't know. Hopefully we don't have to use the bench. It is a massive insurance policy. You can bring those guys on. Smitty and the boys did it at the World Cup. Had to save the box in 2007.
Against Tonga, yeah.
It was Tonga, yeah.
By 35 minutes, they were all on, eh?
That was fun to watch, that scramble. And I'm sure those guys will get on and get a few minutes. But yeah, I sincerely hope that all these youngsters click. I anticipate a high rate of unforced errors and us doing a lot of tackling in the first half. And then Big Brother coming on in the second half to clean up the mess.
And there's a good enough quality of Big Brother in that. I mean, if you're a Wallaby lock and you feel you're competing with these starting Springbok locks, and then you see Big Eben warming up on the side, and he's playing on average 52 to 56 minutes in the last 4 years of his career, where he used to play 75 minutes. And now you say you just have to empty the tank for 35 minutes. What kind of Eben are you going to get?
Yeah.
An angry one.
Yeah. Especially since he didn't get any chicken wings in Brisbane, mate. He is furious.
You know, Marks again, is he accepting a different role at the moment? Or is he understanding that you've got to give Frobbies a start at some stage? That he will come into his own coming on? Or is it a case of him still coming back from an injury?
No, look, I love Bongi and I love Malcolm Marx. I think Malcolm Marx is arguably the best hooker in the world. But if I had to have both of those guys in my squad and I was going to use both of them in a match, I feel like Malcolm is more of the impact player than Bongi. I like the idea that they start with Bongi. He does the basics very well and likes the physical front-up stuff. And Malcolm is the guy who can change the game in the second half when the breakdown's a bit looser and he can get over the ball and adds value in general play as well. So I think that's the way to work it. I'm not sure what Bongi's fitness is, how ready he is to go. So I think it was a matter of either of those two guys backing up Grobbies this week.
Okay, now Ergier Snyman, disappointing. He's missed another 2 tests.
Yeah, man.
Just as you want him to step up, something happens. He gets a niggle.
Timing. Inferno.
Gets an inferno, gets some type of injury.
Yeah.
And you just want him to have a sustained run at 5.
Yeah, it is disappointing because, there are a lot of guys who are part of the bomb squad and have kind of evolved in that role, and now they are regarded as being impact players exclusively. And Ergier was one of the guys I was hoping was going to devolve from that and become a full-time starter. And you got to play to do that, obviously. And so he's not around as is a bad break. But, we talk about New Zealand not having any depth at lock and playing guys we've never heard of. Here we are with Ruan Nokia and Salman Murat captaining the team. There's a great opportunity for two young locks to come in and prove what they can do and take the opportunity.
And with a great insurance policy on the bench. It's a bit like Derry starting and Sam Whitelock sitting on the bench or Retallick sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
For the coach, if it doesn't go well, this guy's coming on or he's coming on in tandem with someone.
Yeah.
Marco van Staden gets a start ahead of Sia. Is this also a test match where you kind of, again, get an appreciation of just how good Sia is for the Boks in his absence?
Yes, definitely. I think from a leadership point of view, for sure. Marco van Staden, I think, is a very good player, but that X factor, that Sia sort of running over players and being a threat when he carries in the wide channel, all that sort of stuff. Like Marco, I think falls into the category. He probably personifies the guy we're talking about with the squad, where it's like, this is your opportunity to prove your stock. Go and do your thing. This is your chance. Take it. And I think Marco needs a big game on the weekend.
If you look at Ulrich Lowe, what did you make of his performance in the Brisbane test?
I thought he was good. But as we've kind of spoken about, is good enough? They played this Wallaby team that was completely overpowered. I thought Ulrich Lowe had lots of involvements, but in terms of the quality of those involvements, remember Sione Lauaki? He may not have carried the ball 50 times in a game, but when he did, there was an explosion. And Ulrich is not ticking that box for me. He's more Vickers van Heerden than he is Skalkberger in his prime when it comes to that sort of thing. And his MO is ball carrying. So Ulrich, I thought, given the pack was going forward and he was running downhill, I thought he was just going to obliterate guys and run through them. And I see that potential in a guy like Evan Roos and Franke Horn.
Jasper Wiese.
So, that was missing for me. The work rate was there, and him and Ruan Nokia and Ben Jason Dixon, massive work rate. Franco Mostert, massive work rate. And those you need guys like that in the team. Those are massively important characters. I'm just saying at 8, you probably want a guy who's going to blow somebody up when he runs into him, not just kind of get tackled and go to ground and place the ball.
Post what you've seen so far, would you still say, Jasper Wiese, you're still waiting for his big performance to kind of be won over? I was won over when he just never gave New Zealand back the ball in the last minute of the World Cup. It was just great pick up from the base, scrum going the wrong way. Yeah. And look, I've always been a Jasper Wiese fan, seen what he did with Leicester Tigers, fix up his discipline and that. But in Dwayne's absence, Jasper being suspended, is it still a case of the moment Jasper's available, he plays? That someone, as well as Ulrich has done, we saw Evan come in, do some good things, that there is a pecking order there, and Jasper Wiese has certainly gone to number 1 at 8.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because certainly nobody in that 8 position has really convinced Rassie that Jasper isn't the guy. Yes, Jasper hasn't been playing and he's been suspended and all that sort of stuff, and he's had his issues in the past, but Rassie sees something in him, and I don't think he's seen anything in the guys that have had the chance to play outside of Jasper to say, okay, actually, no, I need to change the way I look at this thing. This guy brings a unique value here. So, and that just talks to my point about this being a huge potential last opportunity for some guys to really prove a point to Rassie about what their value is to this Bok team with the next World Cup in mind.
Morne van der Berg, he's been outstanding for the Lions in the URC last season. A type of player that plays with huge energy, high tempo, played in what was a struggling Lions team for the last couple of years, but consistently performed well. I know the Bok coaches love his enthusiasm. They think he's got great skill factor, and he's dynamic. Again, could a guy like Sasha just prosper? We talk about inexperience, but let's look at their qualities as players. That is a halfback pairing. We don't see the training, what they've been doing together. And we know Grant Williams gives you cover on the wing. He can add pace to the game when he comes on. He's also potentially better suited to coming off the bench. Is that one of the more exciting ones for you, Morne van der Berg, that's been given a gap?
I think all of these guys are these new faces that are exciting because they all have upside, right? Morne has got great upside, very exciting, energetic player. Mindset-wise, a bit like Faf, stands back for nobody, gets stuck in, will have a go. So very exciting. I think you've got to also be a little bit sort of sober about it and say, okay, what's going to happen in the kicking game with Fassi, Morne, and Sasha as 9, 10, and 15? And where does that leave us? And, what are the vulnerabilities of that? But certainly a huge opportunity for him. He deserves a shot. I would probably have looked at a guy like Grant because I think he deserves a start. And on those fast pitches in Australia, I think his speed really comes to the fore.
If you take the collective, and you're on the couch there, very therapeutic, You were horrified when you walked in and showed me the changes, 10 changes to this. Oh my goodness, this could spell disaster. Oh, what are they doing? But the more we talk, the more at ease you seem, the more confident you seem, the happier you seem.
Look, I am
Box by 25,
I am
box by 10.
exceptionally happy. So I've just gone from expecting the Box to potentially put 50 points on the Wallabies to the Box having to fight for a win in this game. So it's just a downgrade.
You did tell me over the weekend, like at 33-0, you were buoyant on the little WhatsApp to me. And then you seemed like a little bit annoyed that it was 33-7 at the tail end and that they scored a try. And when I spoke to you early in the week, you said, I don't know, when we were awful and the All Blacks were good, they put 57 points past us.
Correct.
At home. They put 57 points past us away from home and gave us 5 penalties. And they buried us. And that game particularly, 22-15 at one stage to the All Blacks with 15 minutes to go. I happened to watch that game next to Bram van Straten.
Yo.
And with 9 minutes to go, he said, I think we're going to take 50. And I said, well, it's 22-15. And about 2 minutes to go, he went down to get a beer. And we were sitting at that big stand at Kings Park at the top. He came back. The last try had been scored. And he said, you know what? There's another 5 minutes here, we get to 80.
Wow.
Because he felt we were gone.
Finished.
Our guys were just played out on their feet. And he said the All Blacks really made a statement that day in how they finished. So I kind of get your frustration a bit that at 33-0, and we're not being piggish now.
No.
We're not being greedy at the buffet.
But listen.
At the buffet. We're
Yeah.
not being greedy. It's like, that's why in my kind of summary, 33-0, when we were 15-15, that's where the game ended for me in terms of dominance.
Totally.
And what I take from that game. Forget that last 15 minutes in the context of, there was no Aussie revival. We were just playing 2 men short. And they still had to work hard to get a try with that. But there was an element of hollowness there.
Yeah, there definitely was. I mean, going into halftime, I looked at the Wallabies, the body language. I was like, these oaks are finished. Like, they were done. They might not come out for the second half. They looked off their feet. They looked absolutely demoralized. Nobody looked like they were really interested in tackling. And then they came out and they did what they did in the second half. And I was like, how did that happen? How did we not finish these guys off? So thrilled with the win. We don't win in Brisbane. And a fantastic record equaling win. But you just go, that killer instinct wasn't there. What I will say, the thing that I'm happiest about with that result is the Boks were overwhelming favourites and they came through and they did what they did. They set the record for the biggest win against the Wallabies, the match 2013. And that was pleasing to see, because usually when we're in that situation where we're overwhelming favourites, we find a reason to mess it up.
Yeah,
and make it ugly.
or our public finds a reason to say, a wounded Australia is a strong Australia.
Exactly.
No, they're not, okay?
Yeah.
So I was bullish, as I always am, on social media. Like I said, I took an hour for the lads to settle down out of respect, because we've been there before. I mean, when we lost 57-0, I think they gave me 3 seconds before they said what's happening in the Republic. And it's not arrogance, it's belief, it's confidence. It's like saying we are world's number one, we are the world's best, we should win like that. And we should win well. And the one thing you've got to give the All Blacks over 100 years in the professional era, and Peter de Villiers, the prop, played 70-odd matches for France, wonderful man, wonderful player. When Rassie first came back, I was fortunate to spend an afternoon, Brian, with him and Peter at Rassie's place, and we watched all the test matches that were being played that night. The last one was South Africa against France. I think we won 18-17. Pollard kicked the penalty late. Tuti was still the coach, end of 2017. And Scotland nearly did the All Blacks that day, but the All Blacks came back with 2 quick tries. And Peter de Villiers sat there and he just looked at them doing the haka and Scotland being all fired up, the Bravehearts. And he said, how good must you be that every week you come out, a team's going to lift by 20% against you and they want to beat you because your record is 85% plus. And he was quite awed by the consistency that they could maintain to get up every week. And
Yes.
that. So going back to the Boks, they got up for Brisbane. My disappointment is I actually wanted to see a bit of a back-to-back to get up again in Perth and smash them again.
Right.
Because this whole Rassie 2018 till now era, when we've expected them to drill a team 2 weeks in a row, they haven't. The Lions, they came back magnificently, won the second test 27-9 in the 3-test series, and it took a last-minute penalty to win 19-16, so it could have gone either way. The All Blacks, they demolished in Nelspruit, foot off the pedal, 4 tries to 2, they lost at home, a bonus point defeat against the All Blacks. when they played over in Australia, you expected them to do Australia twice up on the Gold Coast. They lost twice, Gold Coast, and then came down to Brisbane. Then lost to New Zealand on a game you thought they should have won, and then came back and beat them. So it's been this one win, one off, where we've managed to put it to back has been in the World Cup playoffs, where it really matters the most. But again, fine margins, 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. In another year, it could have gone another way. So there's a part of me that wanted to say, let's see this team go out and smash them again, and that's a series win in Australia, and we move on to South Africa. I do understand the bigger picture. Give players a chance and give that whole squad, build the squad depth.
I wonder, though. Remember how Rassie said in 2019 they were surprised to win the World Cup because they actually picked that team to win the 2023 World Cup. They didn't pick that team to win the 2027 World Cup. And so he knows he has to make changes. And when you install guys and allow them to pick themselves because they're their incumbents, you get a situation like they've got in New Zealand where Sam Whitelock played 3,000 tests in a row and no other lock in the country even saw a black jersey. And now you don't have anybody. And I wonder whether this isn't about sowing the seeds for the changing of the guard and creating an environment where nobody's too comfortable and where you do give guys opportunity to kind of close that gap and sweat in that jersey and make a case for how they're going to get to the next World Cup. Because if he went sort of, as you and I would have done, full metal jacket and just go guns blazing to win the rugby championship, you play all the guys that won in the World Cup. Now they're double world champions and they're the rugby championship champions. It's quite hard to bring guys down from there.
Yeah, but there's also like I've got to front up on something here and disclaimer. I don't really want to watch the breakdown next Sunday if somehow Australia even come within a point of us, because there won't be context given that they made 10 changes.
Yeah,
it'll be, you see how quickly the game changes. 5 league points for the All Blacks at Eden Park. And the Boks, not quite as mighty as we thought they were. And that would be the narrative. And, I enjoy the breakdown in the sense that I have such a huge regard for those 3 guys who present, Sir John Kerwin, Jeff Wilson and Mills, as players. They're playing pedigree. And I think a lot of people who go for them don't actually realize, or they're from a generation that doesn't realize how iconic these players were.
Yeah.
I mean, John Kerwin, 63 tests, 35 tries, the superstar of the 87 World Cup that they won it, dominated for a decade. People think he's anti-South African. I think it goes back to 1986 when he refused to tour with the Cavaliers. Him and Dave Kirk said from a social point of view, they couldn't come to South Africa. So I don't think he's ever been a fan of South Africa, but more because of the politics of the country.
Yes.
Incredible winner. What he did say in this latest show where he's made a mistake as coach and he's got it wrong as a coach, because he coached Italy, he coached Japan, and he coached the Blues and didn't have much success, but he said he was too stubborn to make changes. And he was referencing Scott Robinson and the coaches and saying, they've tried something, it doesn't work, change, move on. Because if you don't, it's going to be a long year and it's going to be an uncomfortable tenure. And he said when he reflects on his coaching career, that's where he got it wrong, that he would be determined to say that player's going to make it or that game plan's going to make it, and invariably it didn't.
Yeah.
But an incredible player, and one of my favourite players, one of my favourite games was when him and Carl du Plessis were on the wins, when the Southern Hemisphere team beat the Northern Hemisphere team at Twickenham. Carl's famous try started by him and Donnie Gerber. And then, Jeff Wilson, we again forget, Goldie.
Yeah.
44 tries in 60 test matches, a dual international. He retired at a young age from rugby, went straight back and played T20s for New Zealand Black Caps and had played ODIs for New Zealand Black Caps, was a dual international at 19. And then Mills, 100 test matches, 35 tries, 84 of them he won. The most understated player, most wonderful player, and one of the favourite stories that I have of Mills as a player in an All Black tour in here was Elangeni, and we're staying there, and these All Black supporters from PE and wherever else have come out, South African All Black supporters, and they've parked themselves down at the Elangeni, and they've waving the All Black flag. All Blacks! All Blacks! The whole day, the whole night. And the players just couldn't come down to those lifts and get out. And then Mills eventually approached them and said, we love your support, but please go support your own team. You've got a great team. They're at the Beverly Hills. And then they called South Africa and the Springboks.
Thanks, but no thanks.
And then also, at a time where the All Blacks didn't really hand over ceremonial jerseys easily, Percy Montgomery's 100th Test match at Newlands, match won 19-0 by the All Blacks. horrendous kicking conditions. That wind swirled in Newlands. Monty missed 2 and Dan Carter missed 3. So to have 2 of the best kickers in the world, both left-footed, struggling, and the 2 that Dan Carter kicked were from right in front, 2 conversions. But Monty always tells a story that he was called out of the change room, and in the tunnel between the change rooms, or the little passageway, there was Mills with a signed All Black jersey. As fullback to fullback, he handed it over as a sign of respect to him.
Beautiful.
So he was just telling about the respect that there is between the nations. And, having been with the Boks in the early 2000s, also it was a case of after a match when the All Blacks played the Springboks, and the Boks were playing the Wallabies the next week, the last thing the All Blacks would say was, and please go and smash them. And the last thing the Boks would say, if the All Blacks play them, please go smash Australia. So there's a love to smash Australia, okay? Yeah. And I hope that this team that we've picked does smash them. And there's a part of me that would love to see Argentina back up what they did magnificently in Wellington, to back that up against the All Blacks at Eden Park. They're 49 matches undefeated going back to 1994. And I know a lot of guys ask if I was there when Paul Roos played his first test in 1997. But I actually was in that press box in 1994 because I was working and living in New Zealand. Jonah Lamu played that day, and it was the try from the ends of the earth that won them the series 2-0. Bishop missed the kick, and from there France counter-attacked and scored. The All Blacks have not lost there. They've drawn 2 matches subsequent to that. Can Argentina actually go there and beat them?
No. No, they cannot. No, the All Blacks will bounce back this week. Argentina were great on the weekend. I think New Zealand were responsible for their own demise as much as Argentina were good. I've never seen an All Blacks team make minus 50 meters off 2 passes. Damian McKenzie's game management was poor. New Zealand were in control of that game. In the second half, they came out, tried to run everything, shelved their kicking game. Argentina parked off in defense, and the rest is history. And I think certainly if they fix some basic tactical issues there, I think New Zealand have got enough to beat Argentina. I don't think Argentina is going to get back to a rugby field until Thursday, because they're going to have had a lot to drink to celebrate a very rare victory in New Zealand. And I think New Zealand will be much better primed for this one at at Eden Park.
We were very dismissive last week in the show. Asked who's going to. I said 20 points. 22 points. Who cares? Yeah. It's going to be an All Black winner. 20 points to 8 in the first half. It seemed like it would be business as usual, even though you never got the sense that New Zealand were quite in control of that game, and relied on individual brilliance. Defaulted back to certain things from kind of a game plans that they may have known. Their selections were a bit odd in the midfield. Scott Robinson, the Razor Edge, 7 successive Super Rugby titles, the anointed one. Look, he was on a hiding to nothing either way, because he had to come in the first year and smash everything, or it was going to be, how good is he really? This isn't Super Rugby. He doesn't have 12 All Blacks in his Crusaders team. But the kind of narrative that's coming out there, no, I'm keeping McKenzie, he just has to develop his game management, is the kind of stuff I used to hear from Alistair Coetzee in the latter part, a little bit from Heineke, coaches who were under threat, Peter de Villiers. This refusal to go away from what they initially thought, because maybe it's not working. So Mahanga is their first choice. They're trying to lure him back from Japan. But Beauden Barrett has scored over 700 test points. He can kick. He can control the game at 10. You've got Will Jordan at fullback. You've got Geordie Barrett who can kick at 12.
Too easy.
Again, you're the conspiracy theorist. Is he wanting to be in a position at the end of the Rugby Championship to say, I never have to pick D-Mac again?
I mean, it's highly possible, mate. I don't know. I mean, that's an easy point to kind of argue for. I think Richie's definitely going to be the long-term guy there. I think that's the guy he wants to bring back. And I've always said I prefer Beauden at fullback. Having said that, in the wake of the loss against Argentina and the need to bounce back, surely Beauden goes to 10, Will Jordan comes back at fullback, and parity's restored. I think what's key for that All Blacks backline is the ability to punch. Like, that All Blacks backline needs to get a little bit less exciting and have guys that can go forward, because that pack is struggling to generate momentum. And so if they had De Allender 12, it's happy days there, because they can go forward. Geordie Barrett is a bit of a unique kind of 12 in that he's 7 foot tall and is looking to offload. I'm not sure whether he's that hammer that if they had Laumapi there now, I think things would take a bit of pressure off that pack, and they could go forward in the back line and kind of use that momentum to get going. So I don't know what they're going to do at 10. I'm with you. I would go Bowden at 10, even though I prefer him at fullback, and I would chuck Will Jordan at fullback this week.
And we forget, you look at the class of the All Blacks, the teams that we revered. Smith at 9 in his prime, Carter at 10, Nonu and Sonny Bill Williams alternating at 12. It's a bit like they had the original centre bomb squad.
There you go.
And Conrad Smith on outside centre.
Yeah.
You had Smith on the wing. You just had incredible game players. Mills, as he's played those 100 tests during that period. Ben Smith on that win has scored lots and lots of tries. And you could pick a host on the other win. They just came in and out. The bus, Julian Sevilla.
Exactly.
Now, compare that backline and then the forwards. So if you take McCaw, Kieran Reid, and Jerome Kainu, Brodie Retallick, Sam Whitelock, and then a strong veteran seasoned front row, that was a very different All Black side. That All Black side has when you talk about this current Springbok side, that's how we used to speak about those All Black sides.
And these guys are trying to play like those guys without that cattle. I mean, they made 16 offloads and they only had 35% gain line. So they were going backwards, but they were offloading.
So look, when I watched the breakdown, I said the three lads were chatting after the game, and I said caption this on X, and people said meltdown, not breakdown. and Jeff also started very said unemotion. Okay, let's look at the weekend's test matches. And he and Sir JK obviously have a history. One replaced the other one at the beginning of his test career, the other one at the tail end of his test career. I don't think he's ever forgotten that. But Mills is like the consolidated senior statesman there, and he's the Switzerland. He just calms everything down and chats to people.
JK still has his hair though, so Goldie's...
No, and he's got his hair. As the money man would say, he's got his looks. He's a good-looking guy. and an incredible playing career, and an incredible New Zealand, what he's done for sport in that country. But they were very unanimous about the team looks confused. The All Blacks their players look like they're caught between two worlds. They look like there's too much information being given to them, and they default back to what they know individually. And then they pointed out this thing of every coach has got a role there. Every coach has got a say in selection. It's the first time they've done it like that. Do too many cooks spoil the broth in that kitchen at the moment?
I think it depends. You could have if you struggle with rush hour traffic in your city, you could build 20 lanes across, but if they all come into the foreshore in Cape Town into one lane, it doesn't really fix anything, does it? And so for the All Blacks, it's fine that everybody has a voice there, and that's great, and I think Rassie does the same thing. He creates the illusion that he's listening to everybody, and everybody's going to say in what happens. But ultimately, Rassie makes the call on what's going to happen. And I think Razor is probably the same guy. I don't think that's a reason. I think a reason is that these guys have come out of Super Rugby where they've been playing basketball for 4 months against some terrible teams from Australia. They haven't been punched in the face for a long time. These Argentinians are robust. They're physical, and they go point A to point B. There's no squiggly line there. It's a straight line. So I think it's them acclimating to that kind of test match rugby again, and then also doing that with a team that's struggling for momentum, which is not... The Kiwis will never be used to that kind of thing.
It's the second time you use that word. What does it mean?
Which one?
Acclimating.
Is it the second time?
Yeah.
Today?
Does it mean to acclimatize?
Acclimatize.
Acclimating. Narrative or narrative? Which one is it?
It's got to be narrative.
All right. So the narrative, going back to Mills, he said, what surprised him about this New Zealand side, and he goes to the two matches against England, forget the Fijian one, because they were on the front foot that whole game, and then this one. If you're going to kick, you've got to know why you're kicking.
Big time.
And you love this discussion because you're a big believer in kicking being an essential part of rugby. He says you kick to win back a contestable, you kick to play for field position, and to tell them, kick it back, and from that we're going to counter. He said, watch the All Blacks hoof that ball was, they just needed 10 seconds away from their trial and defending, and what shocked them was the Pumas played like a good Springbok All Black side. They carried the ball back, and they just put the pressure right back on them.
Yeah.
And the last 20 minutes of that match, I felt like I was watching a poor Springbok Puma side play against a very good Springbok / All Black side, the vintage sides, in the control and the structure that was there. It would have been criminal had the All Blacks somehow poxed that win at the end, because the last 30 minutes, there was only one team in it, and very similar to when they won in Christchurch, and they were 18-6 down, the Pumas, and came back and won 25-18.
Yeah.
But to score 38 points in New Zealand, the biggest one after that was our 36-34 in Wellington.
Doesn't that talk to my Super Rugby point? 38 points against the All Blacks in New Zealand.
It was
Pumas.
It was a typical like Super Rugby game, 38-30. Wellington, what do you make of this? Home ground, the All Blacks haven't won there since 2016. and lost to the Lions there, drew with South Africa, drew with the Wallabies, lost to Ireland, lost to the Pumas. They winless in their last 6 test matches over a 7-year period at home.
Yeah.
And they're playing the Wallabies there in the Bledisloe. So that's a good chance for the Wallabies.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to see that. That'd be worth watching, mate.
Is that going to be the playoff for 3rd and 4th, the Bledisloe Cup?
How glorious would that be? I'd love to see Argentina finish 2nd.
It reminds me of the 2007 World Cup when Australia went home in the quarterfinals and the All Blacks went home in the quarterfinals. The All Blacks were in Cardiff and Australia was in Marseille. And when they gave out the draw, they said the first semi-final will be between England and France in Paris. The second semi-final will be between South Africa and Argentina in Paris. And the Bledisloe Cup will be in London between Australia and Heathrow Airport, Australia and the All Blacks. The playoff for 7th and 8th. So it is nice to rag. They've had so much dominance over us for 2 decades. We're not getting cocky. We're not getting arrogant. We're having fun. And we enjoyed it. And I went on social media and I enjoyed it. Hello, is anyone there? What are you saying now? Fozzie, are you okay in the Great Waikato? It's a game that we discuss. It's a game that we debate. Also, geez, it's so cliche. Don't write off the All Blacks. Do it at your own peril. A wounded All Black, a wounded Springbok. I heard about a wounded Springbok for about 10 years when we was ranked 7th in the world.
Correct, mate.
So take it for what it is. Thank you, Rassie Rasmus, for adding more spice to this weekend, making it a little bit more unpredictable by picking a very different Springbok team. It's a bit like going on a Super Rugby tour with the Sharks and the Stormers, and you play one of them in Brisbane, you play the other team in Perth. And it's like, we beat a South African team or we lost to one. You don't actually know which one.
Yeah.
So what do you want to say to your many, many supporters there, Zels? Are you calmer now for having kind of decompressed?
Got it out of me.
Spoken through it and realized it's actually not such a bad side.
It's not such a bad side. It is going to make for an interesting game. I think if he hadn't made these changes, we were looking at quite a big blowout and we wouldn't have had much to talk about after half time.
And can I see more positivity?
I am positive, mate. Very positive.
But you said high standards.
I do set extremely high standards, which is why I was a little bit disappointed with the box kicking game on the weekend. Not really up to quality.
And no 50 points. I mean, it's like...
And no 50 points.
And giving up that try.
Oh, mate. Why? We could have blanked them.
But you know what was really crushing everyone in Ireland when they were listening to the breakdown? Was Tim Horan saying, oh, God, to watch the world number 1 team, Sonny Bill Williams. I had to just sit back and marvel and watch them. Mills saying, well, that's what happens when the best team in the world plays like that.
Oh, beautiful.
Ireland like,
what about us, guys?
We beat them with a drop goal in Durban. Well, whatever, that one didn't count, okay? So the losses don't count, the wins do, and we move on. We are going to be at the Arneson Hotel, Zels, myself, with Ryan O'Connor, The Rock, who's going to be chairing a Q&A as we're taking Zels and Keo on the road. Thanks to Billy Delport and his eBet company. Imad will be there filming. And then also we got some special guests. Percy Montgomery is going to be there. Not only talking rugby, but pouring his El Centurion tequila. And I must tell you, come armed and come warm because that stuff is a killer. And then obviously John Dobson's going to brace us with his presence and he's going to come have a few dops and he's doing some charity work out there at the Arneson Rugby Club. So it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful weekend. It's no charge. It's coming to the bar, have a few dops with us. Let's watch the Boks play against the Wallabies and get to meet Zels, man. Get to see that he's a really fun guy. He's not so negative all the time. He's a positive guy, man. And it's going to be lekker to be out there and to have a bit of fun. And it's a 11:45 kickoff. We are going to talk a bit later in the week. We're going to do a proper preview on Thursday when we actually see which team the Wallabies can find to play against the Springboks. And we're going to see what team the All Blacks have picked and the Pumas have picked. And then you can decide, is this going to be a historic weekend for the Pumas? Are they going to get the romantic finish and be the team to go to Eden Park and end that 49-match unbeaten record? Wow, that would be an incredible story. First team to win 2 back-to-back tests since 1994 when the French did that. And can the Boks come away from Perth 2-0 victors and then sit back and watch the Rickers down another brandy and Coke and then down the style bender?